So ING Bank, very briefly, it's a Dutch bank. We're present in 40 countries, 54,000 employees, around 12 to 15,000 externals at any given time. We are 35 million customers. We have gone through unprecedented change, like all financial institutions since the crisis. Our purpose is to empower people to stay a step ahead in life and in business. Doesn't sound so much like a bank, right? And that's really indicative of some of the changes we're making. We really want to become a digital bank. So we see our competitors as tech companies rather than other banks. And you can see at the heart of our strategic enablers in order to achieve our purpose is developing our analytics capabilities to understand our customers better. So that has been a real advantage for us in the HR domain because, of course, if you're applying it to your customers, it makes sense to apply it to your people. So we have just embarked, in order to accelerate towards our goals, we've embarked on a company-wide transformation. And that transformation is mostly to leverage off those synergies so that we can focus more on the strategic and innovative aspects. We are bringing together those platforms in our different businesses, and we're driving standardization and synergies through our support functions and processes as well. So this is a really large-scale transformation, and that's also coming to us in HR. The reason I'm giving you this context is because this has driven some of the choices we've made when we've been developing our people analytics capabilities. So in HR, we're embarking on an HR transformation. I think pretty much everybody is in HR. Hands up, who's in HR transformation as we speak in your companies? Yes, so pretty much 90% of the room. But this is the biggest one we've ever done. We're changing everything at the same time, focused on 4 aspects in HR. So we're standardizing globally 75% of our HR processes. So ING traditionally has been a very federated organization, and to follow the synergies in our business, we're also bringing that to our people practices. At the moment, we have 70 different variable remuneration schemes, 18 different performance management processes, et cetera, et cetera. So that's really a huge undertaking to standardize. We're implementing Workday, so one employee master system. At the moment, we have more than 200 service platforms. So this is also a massive undertaking. And in the end state, I think we expect to have about 14 global data sources. So we will still have more data sources than just Workday. We are really focusing on that employee experience. We're moving more to employee and manager self-service. And to do that, we need to build a great people operations function, and we're working together with IBM on that. So we're also doing a BPO. You're getting the picture, right? Bold changes. And we decided we're also going to, because of all those other changes, that really fundamentally changes the roles of our HRBPs and our COEs, so less operational, more strategic. So we're also developing on the roles and profiles of our HR specialists. So when we look at our people analytics journey, we started in 2013, just a little ahead of our Think Forward strategy with the analytics at the heart. So we launched in 2013. There was 2 employees working on reporting at a group level. I joined the team, and we thought, how do we get started? And when I look back, we really went through 3 main steps, and this is where we are today, chapter 3. So chapter 1, we thought, how do we get started? So we got some external experts to help us evaluate how ready the organization was for people analytics. And you can safely assume our data sets were good enough quality to get started, even with our federated landscape. So there is hope for you. There was no pockets of maturity in HR analytics anywhere in our organization, and our business was quite skeptical. They were skeptical about the quality of our HR data. They were skeptical whether HR people could produce trustworthy insights from data. But they said, well, if you could do this, show us how it's done. So we made a 1-year plan. And we decided not to invest in heavy investments like talent and infrastructure. We decided to use experts to help us learn and learn quickly. and focus on conducting small pilots, focus on raising awareness amongst our HR function in terms of analytical skills, asking the right questions, and raising that awareness that this is coming, and it's important to our role in HR, and also working on improving our data quality. So that's how we started. After 1 year, we evaluated, and we saw the value, so then we started making selected investments, careful investments, to build the infrastructure and talent that we needed to move towards more maturity in analytics. So this was chapter 2, and there I will share a little bit more in the next slides. And now we're in chapter 3, so we have those organizational enablers in place. And now the challenge for us going forward is how do we really rapidly accelerate and add business value through data analytics in a sustained way. So we're 14 employees in my team. I'll tell you a little bit more about what kind of skills we have. So basically, what do? We turn data insights into to improve ING's performance. This is what we ultimately want to do. These are a few examples. I go to lots of conferences and everybody talks in a very nice high-level way about the examples. Unfortunately, we can't always share all the mechanisms of what we're doing because of data privacy. But these are a couple of concrete examples. On the left-hand side, we looked into branch performance because of the pressure on costs in the branches and the move to mobile. We wanted to see what was the characteristics of top-performing branch workers, what was the optimum number of FTEs. To do that, we combine business and HR data, and we give the business a new lens on their business. They're used to looking at market and geographic factors, but they didn't understand the exact profile that you need in the branches to make it effective. The middle one is maybe specific to European organizations where we have those massive redeployments or restructurings. As our business is transforming, jobs are changing. So we had the challenge in one of our businesses of redeploying almost 2,000 people. And you have to do that in a fair, unbiased, fast way. So we made a matching algorithm that the matching committee could use to inform their decisions on who is the best match between the employees who have applied for a certain number of jobs and the jobs of the future. So it's a very sensitive process, but actually it was a really concrete one, and it really sped up the decision making, made it very transparent, and that's all in consultation with those very difficult stakeholders like the trades unions and the workers' councils. Recruitment, I think, is a familiar example. So in our high-volume recruitment areas where we're not very competitive in the labor markets, we used an algorithm to basically predict which candidates are most likely to be a top hire. I think it's quite a familiar application of HR analytics. So our ambition is to make sure that ING people decisions are driven by facts. So we're not replacing managers in their decision-making, we're supporting the decision-making. Man and machine are always going to make better decisions, not one or the other. So that's always careful to be pointed out. So where do we start? We start with the data and infrastructure. Obviously that is key, but is not the goal. Because where you get the value is when you turn it into actionable insights. So how do we do that? We focus on 3 value drivers. We build HR's capabilities. You cannot have the reach from a small elite analytics team. You need to prepare your HR organization. They need to ask the right questions. You also need to help them to translate the insights into recommendations or actions for their businesses. I think in this case, we underestimated how much you really need to focus on building the HR capabilities. So we've made it a priority going forward, especially because of our HR transformation. You need to focus on relevant issues. As you grow in maturity, you see more and more demand. So we could be busy every single day with all kinds of analytical requests. And the most difficult thing for analytics teams is focus. So making the right choices about where you're going to add the most value in data analytics, and not just researching everything. And I'll share a little bit about how we make those decisions in a moment. And we want to really embed analytics in the way we work. So within our processes, our HR processes, but also within our service delivery model, and also educating our business to demand facts when it comes to their people decisions. My favorite, governance. Well, this is just an important part of the way you operate. And also all the legal and other considerations. We have to make very careful choices here. And I get support on that from my HRMT. So I think, yeah, that's an important aspect. And then where are we going to deliver business value? These are the business value drivers we've selected based on our business priorities. And that's important choices that you need to make based on your own business strategy. So we talked a little bit about our journey and why we've made some of the choices we've made. So this is some of the enablers. I thought it was nice to dive into this because we don't generally talk that much about the technical aspects of doing analytics. So I described to you our very complicated data landscape that we have come from, and this is where we're going to. So you can see that these are all our data sources on this side. So Workday, your employee master data systems, you've got apps, you've got games, you've got all kinds of wonderful digital HR data sources now. We work within the ING private cloud because of our risk profile. I think in different companies you have different risk profiles. So this also guides some of the choices that I've had to make because of our company's risk profile in terms of where and how we're allowed to use employee data. It's very relevant now. GDPR is coming, right? We're all prepared. Yeah? Yeah. You just say yes. And when we got started, I mentioned to you that we didn't invest a lot in advanced analytics infrastructure. However, analysts require their analytical tools to do their work. So you can be quite creative when you make these choices. Perhaps you have business analytics teams that have an analytics environment that you could ring-fence a secure part to do your employee analytics. You could outsource it if you're allowed to do that based on your risk profile. But we weren't allowed to do any of those choices, so we set up a small temporary environment where we could use open source tools, and they don't have big licensing fees, so you can just get started straight away. Now, 3 years down the track, we invested in an analytics environment, and for us, and these are some of the fun tools that the analysts use, and for us, it was a choice deliberately to set up our own environment, because in the bank we have a Hadoop cluster, but that's a bit like a Ferrari. And whilst we are doing very nice things, we're still trying to drive a Fiat, and if we unleash a Ferrari, you can imagine what happens. So, however, we are now at a level of maturity that we have been using the Hadoop cluster. Just to give you an indication, something that took us 3 days to run before in our own environment now takes 30 minutes. So that's the power of cluster computing. This is our multidisciplinary team. And I think that's something you really need to think about. Where you source these skills is a choice. It doesn't have to be an essential team, but these are the kind of skills you will need to be successful in HR analytics, advanced analytics, not just reporting. So in my team, I have people analytics consultants. They build the bridge between the technical analysts and the business and HR. So they frame the business problems, and they decide on the priorities. They do a lot of the storytelling, because the technical people, they want to analyze. They want to build models, and they want to discover things in the data. And as our portfolio grew bigger, that meant that we hired some consultants, and it has been extremely successful model, partnering a data scientist and a consultant who understands the business and can coach the HR BPs is really effective. So we have econometricians, they're statistical modelers. We have data scientists, they're the ones that churn through the data and program really well. Oh, sorry. We have BI experts who do a lot of the visualization and make the dashboards, because even your complex analytical models have those kind of outcomes. We have a data engineer, he takes care of our platform and he makes the data available for the analysts. And we have a PhD student in social sciences, because you definitely need the social science perspective, because we're talking about behavioral aspects, and an engagement or a culture expert also really helps. It takes the quality of your mathematical models to a new level. In the bubbles around, I've evaluated how skilled we are on these capabilities. And you can see that we still have some work to do on visualizing and telling the story. Knowing the business and knowing it well is also something that we need to focus on. So I talked earlier about focus in an analytics team. Of course, we start with our people priorities. However, people strategies tend to be still quite broad, and it doesn't always mean that you're going to add value with data analytics. So we still have to make choices within that. And secondly, that's a top-down approach. So that's been translated from your business strategy, but you also want a bottom-up approach. So this is the filters we've put together to help us to refine the business problem and decide, are we really going to add value in this respect? And I think it's also so that we make a little bit more deliberate choices. Before, we just wanted to show our value as quickly as possible, but now we have the luxury of making a bit more deliberate choices where we're going to make the most business value. We work in an agile model. I think you've probably read a little bit about ING and the way we have changed the way we do our business into pure agile, so self-steering teams, where they set their own priorities, they choose their own leaders, et cetera, et cetera. So we do a little bit of that because we want to have a minimum viable product that's an MVP every 2 months. Because the problem is, with all the legal considerations and all the stakeholder management that's involved in doing an analytics project, you can be busy for 6 months and then the business problem is no longer relevant. So we want to develop something and then improve it over time. Make sure you get those insights out the door in at least 2 months. So these are the choices we've made. These are some of the solutions we have under development. So I think some of the more advanced analytics teams talk about democratizing models, et cetera, and making them available for managers. So these are some of the things we've been developing. I think they're quite familiar. We focus a lot on reward because we're a bank. Diversity, continuous listening. So how can we more rapidly respond to employee needs rather than the big engagement surveys? How can we combine that with other data sources to gain more insight? How could we listen to our employees without asking them? What other data sources? We love surveys in the HR world, but what other data sources could we use to understand how motivated or engaged our employees are? Team performance, I put discovery because, of course, we start with the people priorities, but we also expect my team to do research in the data and keep an eye on external trends and inform us of things that we didn't know that perhaps we need to put into our people priorities. So that's that engine in and out of your strategy. So not only monitoring, but also feeding your people priority strategy. We also experiment. So we're looking into chatbots. I think it's not a new concept, but it's quite a complicated thing in terms of legal and data privacy. Continuous listening I talked about. We're also designing a new head office for ING, and we wanted to know if the workforce it would suit the workforce of the future. So how do our employees use the building? Does that differ depending on demographic segments? So we used Wi-Fi and other data sources, just in an experimental environment to see and inform the design of the new head office. Things that for Google are probably daily business, but are quite new for a European corporate like us. So this is my final piece of advice, and you can read this at your own leisure. But some of the things that I wish people had told me along the way, you have to invest in people analytics at a senior level. You have to take it seriously if you're going to develop these capabilities. Shoving it down somewhere in HR operations, down in one of the countries, is not going to get the strategic value add that you need. Analytics takes investment. I've described some of the investments we've made, and I notice for some of the corporates or smaller companies, they're a bit overwhelmed by what it's going to take. But like I said, you can be quite creative about how you source those skills or how you develop those models, and you can always take a buy or a build strategy. There's going to be a business a balance in that, and that's the same for us. Why would we spend 1 year developing an analytical model when the techniques are available in the market? And that's something that's only developed in the last few years because the big consultancies and the big HR tech providers, they're developing analytical models that you can buy. But you will still need people internally that understand the mechanisms of the models. It's extremely dangerous to use black box models without understanding what you're looking at. Educate everybody. So we spend a lot of time educating HR and ourselves, but it's also important to educate your business, your managers, because they're the ones managing the people on a daily basis. They're the ones making decisions about business performance based on our advice. So the other part is make sure you bring your partners. I cannot do analytics without my IT partners, my risk and my legal partners. I meet with my risk and legal team every 3 weeks for the last 3.5 years. And that is how I've overcome some of those challenges of dealing with workers' councils, dealing with data privacy, and those objections that people have when you start in this area. So they came on the learning journey with us, and now they send me advice and ideas for research, which is quite good. I think some of the others are quite clear. Don't forget to prioritize clean and reliable data, but don't get stuck there, because if you only work on fixing the data, you'll be busy for the next 20 years. You're never going to get there. So do it both at the same time. Work on your data and your basics, but also explore some of these new techniques that are out there.